There are all kinds of strategies for game playing. And some time ago, I started thinking about one of those strategies relative to the art world. It's interesting to me to think about art criticism and the way the art critic that has very strong and profound influence on many young artists, especially these days, the way the art critic functions in society. As you know, the art critic visits the exhibition, and then using their own scholarship, personal history, and points of view, develop a reaction to the work that they look at. What concerned me is that so many young people are profoundly influenced by those opinions. And I thought it might be fun to have a little bit of a game in relation, a friendly game, played in relationship to the voice of the art critic. So this work actually started to be a two-dimensional one. It was to be on the wall. And I was thinking about a couple of things. One, something like a drawing that happens in space up above the piece, where these linear gestures look as though they're animated by something up above, but we can't see, like a marionette show. And down below, I wanted to have something that reminded me of that, those cats that were stuffed that sat on those platforms in the old carnivals, and you threw baseballs at them, knocked them off the fence, and if you're lucky, you win a teddy bear or something of the sort. Replacing the idea of the cats, however, I thought to do something that had a little figurative reference to the critics. So the game began to develop, as I said, first two-dimensionally, and it got larger and larger until finally I said, Gerhardt, this has got to be a real playable game. And at that point, I had a number of ideas came to mind. So the balls that one plays the game with include bits of text that are actually directly taken from Art in America. These are words of critics in print. And notice how nicely they resemble eyeballs. I hope you see that. The player comes and plays the game, throws the eyeball at the subject, and I think kind of wonderfully.
My dear, the voice of Jeff Koons has made it impossible to accept the existence of this work.
So by knocking over the critic, you activate the voice of the critic who is telling you what the work is not.
It is impossible to sanction the credibility of this work without recognizing its debt to Kandinsky.
In the long run, what is the recourse? I mean, I don't think that there's anything to be done except simply to look on your own terms, and that's specifically what I had in mind. I think art needs to empower the spectator. It is an extension of the people who create the artworks, but the completion of the circuitry in forming art is when the eyes of the viewer and the minds of the viewer come to the work and interact with it. If you want to regard that as a game, okay. I've done a number of works subsequent to this one that were really necessary because so many great ideas kind of started bubbling forward after I did this. The second of those games is called Dinner Talk, and it shows a group of 12 critics, the number is significant, sitting around an oval table looking out at the audience for the artwork. Behind them hangs a long curtain, and it is the subject of their criticism. A group of 12 individuals have been asked to write criticisms about that artwork, and you will notice when the game is played, simply by lowering the heads of each of the critics, a light illuminates the space under the table, and the critic begins to make declarations about the piece that is hanging above the table.
The more
What I love about the piece is that it's possible to lower all 12 critics, so they're all speaking together underneath the table. Of course, that's a place where art critics make their most profound comments. And the fact that they are looking at each other under the table leaves the artwork itself free for the audience. The third piece involves a group of about 30 members of an audience. And all those members of the audience are sitting on 3 shelves looking out at the viewing audience for the artwork, and what represents the artwork in this piece is hanging behind them. So in the background, I played with the initial of my own name, Gerhardt, and drew it very spontaneously, eventually allowing it to take on the character of forms that are suspended in space. They are animated as I see them. Are they undersea forms? Are they floating in the air? Are they ready to sprout legs? I don't know. But to me, they are as live as the letter G is when I sign my name. You may notice that as you lower each of those members of the audience, it puts them into a position where they're looking behind them at the artwork that is on the wall. There's an echo of their presence in that artwork. You might look for that as a member of the audience. And as the head is lowered, on the interior of it are fragments that were taken from those Victorian stencils that I've talked about earlier and used in other works. Those fragments suggesting to me the filters through which each of us think about or react to works of art that we see in common. 12 people can look at the same artwork. Each of them sees it from a different point of view. And I was trying to echo some of that within that piece. And then the final work is a piece that does, what is it? The ultimate revenge, I guess. Because in this case, I've taken the images of the critics and embedded them into a woven textile, so that the subject that they are critiquing now is containing them. I think it's kind of a nice gesture, and there's a sense of a game going on in kind of a theatrical presentation in conjunction with them. So the suite of works kind of come together to create an idea that I think is of interest, and I doubt whether many will be offended by the whole thing, but if it rustles a few feathers, that's not a problem.
It is absolutely impossible to understand this work except through the eyes of Picasso.
It is impossible to sanction the credibility of this work without recognizing its debt to Kandinsky.
My dear, the voice of Jeff Koons has made it impossible to accept the existence of this work.
In light of accomplishments by Louise Bourgeois,
Recognizing the
undertaking a work
accomplishments of
such as
Jasper
this
John,
This work would never
why
have
in the
come into
world would
being
one
without
pursue
Paul
such a work
Cézanne.
as this?
Of course, when one
You
considers
must
this work,
acknowledge
one
the
thinks first and
impossibility.
It is
foremost
definitely
of Joseph
impossible
Stalin.
to see this
It is
work
not possible
independent
to
of the
think
iconic
of
contributions
work
of Andy
without
Warhol.
recognizing
no
its complete
potential
dependence
for the
on
existence
Alexander
of this
Calder.
work outside the encompassing realm of Marcel Duchamp.